G'day ladies and gents, and welcome back to MagzTV, and welcome back to another unboxing and tech review. And today we're going to be looking at the VKB-Sim Gladiator 2. Now, the Gladiator 2 is one of the newest joysticks in the VKB-Sim range. It is an updated version of their previous Gladiator joystick. It's a really nice stick. I've had this one for a couple of weeks now, and it is a really nice piece of kit to work with. Now, I'm doing this in post-commentary because I had an audio glitch when I was actually recording the unboxing and the main review, but that's fine. We've got the DCS and War Thunder logos on the side of the box there. It is an improved joystick for both. I have been asked why bother showing the unboxing at all in these reviews. Well, honestly, a lot of people will be ordering these products from online, so the quality of the boxing and the packaging relates directly to how well your item is going to be protected. I'm happy to report the VKB Sims outer boxing is very good quality. So, once you've opened it, as with most pieces of equipment, you have the small manual wrapped in a small plastic pocket sitting on top of the joystick itself. It's pretty much just a standard user manual with instructions to go to the website to download any additional software you might need. Comes in English and Russian. So, the internals to the box itself. The joystick is held in place by a two-piece cardboard pocket that's actually very tightly packed in. It's a very good, very thick cardboard. I'm happy to report anybody ordering this from online, which many of you will have to, but I'll come to that later on in the video. It's a very good transit packaging, and the good part about it is the actual boxing itself is not particularly large, so the mailing cost should be relatively low for an item such as this, while still keeping the joystick itself extremely safe. Now, the internal packaging that holds the joystick itself is wedged into the box rather tight, and this is absolutely not a bad thing. The smallest amount of movement you have in the packaging itself, the better. Now, the packaging itself, the internal boxing, is two-part, folded against itself, so you open it up by simply pulling the two halves into two separate pieces. The joystick itself is a single piece and just comes wrapped in plastic in the center of the unit. You can see how much cardboard is around the outside to make sure this doesn't move. So, very, very, very good overall packaging. The joystick itself didn't have a single mark or scratch or speck of dust on it anywhere after opening it up. It was very, very well kept. I have had some stuff in the past that didn't survive so well, but pretty happy with what I see here. So, let's go through and actually have a closer look at the stick. So, taking a look at the Gladiator, we'll start at the base of the joystick on the right-hand side. So we have a large red button here. It's actually marked as a eject button, as you can see. It's in a position where you won't accidentally strike it on the joystick. With your hand in normal position, you actually have to drop your hand down to actually get to it. Nice and big and easy button to hit. Of course, as with all buttons, you can bind them to whatever you wish to. Again, the same thing with just below, we have a start button for designated engine start. Again, you can bind it to whatever you want, but it's intended with that thought in mind. Going to the rear of the Gladiator, as you can see, we have 6 base buttons and a light setting. 3 buttons across the top, 3 through the middle, divided, different shape, different color, and then 3 identical round buttons to the bottom, although they do stand out a little bit further, so it's easy to distinguish between all 3 buttons regardless of where you are, and with 2 small dividing pieces that allow you to very easily, without looking, be able to differentiate between whichever particular button you're trying to put your fingers to. Around the right hand side we have the throttle. Now, the throttle axis itself is actually rather small. As you can see, it doesn't have a lot of movement, but there is a good amount of tension behind it, which makes making precise movements on it extremely easy. 2 buttons on the left hand side. Designated marking is for flaps. You can use them for whatever you want, but I do use them for that often when I'm using the joystick alone. And the mode button. Now, the mode button is interesting. The lights on the back of the joystick here, we can see we have one that is red and one that is green. They're not lit up at the moment because the joystick's not plugged in. Now, hitting the mode button will switch between the two and double the amount of buttons that you can bind to this rear panel. Generally, the recommendation from VKB is that the standard mode be for combat, the secondary mode be for navigation. However, I found I often use things like engine management for the second panel. So, moving attention from the base to the joystick itself. Now, the first thing you'll notice is the stick's rather unique design. That is because this is a replica stick. It's based on the World War II German KG-12 grip. This was the same grip that you found commonly in the BF-109. So if you happen to like flying World War II aircraft and you like the 109, this is a fairly authentic stick to fly with. So, buttons on the sticks. For starters, you have the front trigger button, which is a nice clicky button, as you can see. Same with the button on top. I actually really like these. A good sense of hitting them. And on the left-hand side of the stick, exactly where your thumb would sit, there is a 4-way directional hat. Not a lot of buttons on the joystick itself, it appears. However, if you look at the base of the stick, there is a pinky trigger or a pinky toggle at the base. This works as a modifier, so if you were to pull the trigger once, that is activating button 1 on the joystick. However, if you hit the pinky trigger and hit that button again, that's now button 15. This works in conjunction with the mode modifier on the base of the stick. So if you hit the mode modifier to go from mode 1 to mode 2, hit the pinky trigger at the base of the joystick and then hit the trigger again, that's now button 17. Same applies with the top trigger, and the modifier also gives you 2 sets of buttons on the 4-way directional hat. Now the second small thing to cover here is the trigger safety itself. The trigger for this joystick can fold up over the top and just with a small press down locks over the top. Now here it means I cannot strike this top button, and the button at the front of the joystick is now recessed in between these 2 plastic tabs, so you've got to actually put your finger in to be able to hit it, something you normally wouldn't do. This prevents you from accidentally misfiring any weapons at any time. However, if you just cock your thumb just underneath the trigger itself and flick, it snaps straight back into the trigger position ready to operate, clearing the safety. So the trigger itself is actually the safety for the joystick. So the last thing to cover here is the base itself. Now the joystick is extremely heavy, and this is because it's made of a really good, really high density plastic for starters. You're not going to break this. In fact, you could beat somebody with this and the joystick would win. But furthermore, if you look at the base of it, it's actually got quite a thick metal plate on the bottom. Let's sit this up here. As you can hear, metal plate with 4 really good high quality rubber pads. So I can put this on the base here and you can see I've got a good clean desktop surface, and with it down and clamped I can't actually move it. It's highly unlikely you're going to be able to thrash this joystick around enough to actually move it from wherever you decide to place it. However, if you are concerned about that, or if you are looking to put it somewhere like on a side chair mount, there are screw holes already present in the base so you can bolt it to whatever surface you like. The last part to cover is directly on the front, where we have 2 little ports. The closest one is obviously for pedals. This is dedicated for VKB's personal pedal setup, so you can just plug them straight in the front, save yourself a USB port, and just use the one that's already present on the joystick. The second one is a Syst Port. Now, I haven't been able to find exact documentation on what that is actually for. It doesn't say in the manual, but I'm making the assumption at this point it is for generic pedals. That plug, for example, seems to be perfectly the right size to fit in the Thrustmaster pedals that I currently have. I haven't tested to see whether or not they work yet, but I will try and do so. And of course, you've got your end cabling as well. Nothing particularly impressive there. It is just a standard USB 2 cable. So I think we've gone over all the joystick here. Let's go through and get to the flight testing. So first up, let's take a look at the 2 games on the box, starting with War Thunder. The Gladiator 2 may be the best single-piece setup I've ever used for War Thunder. The Contactless MaRS sensors make the stick's action one of the smoothest I've ever felt, although it is rather light on resistance. Those who like high levels of resistance in their flight controllers may find the Gladiator a little too soft for their tastes. Binding controls in War Thunder is pretty straightforward, with usage of the mode switch and all 29 buttons. Binding all of the necessary controls was simple, with space left over, as I mentioned before, for some of the optional controls such as mech. It's easy to see why War Thunder's logo is on the side of the box. The Gladiator 2 has pretty much all of the advantages of a small HOTAS setup on a single stick, and it was a pleasure to use, so much so that it feels almost as if the stick was designed with War Thunder in mind. The news is also good on the DCS front as well. While 29 buttons are nowhere near enough to bind all of the controls needed for DCS, it is more than enough for the controls that you would require in the heat of the moment. Using the keyboard for the remainder, I had no issue flying with just the Gladiator 2 and no HOTAS throttle unit. That being said, I do recommend a throttle for DCS for additional buttons and finer control of the throttle. While VKB-Sim currently does not have one available, they do have one under development at this time. However, for those unwilling to wait for a matching set and that are interested in Gladiator 2 as a HOTAS option, I recommend pairing them with the Thrustmaster TWCS throttle. It's a pretty good match, and it's what I'm actually using most of the time now. Also, the Gladiator 2 works fantastically as a helicopter cyclic, its low resistance and smoothness becoming quite its strength in this role. Next up, armour. The Gladiator 2 is truly fantastic in armour for both jet and helicopter combat, with more than enough bindings to be able to fit every control and then some onto the stick. But the real advantage of the Gladiator here is the size. Due to having to manage infantry roles in conjunction with flight, desk space can be an issue for the armour player, as there's a need to keep keyboard and mouse in place for controlling you in infantry form while also making room for a flight stick. The Gladiator's small footprint comes into play here. The Gladiator is actually smaller than a Logitech 3D Pro at the base, being around about the same length but no more than 2/3 of the width. And with Armour's new Jet DLC coming, the Gladiator 2 may be worth considering for those wishing to become dedicated Armour pilots. And last of all, Star Citizen. I actually pilot twin stick in Star Citizen, using the Gladiator 2 as the main hand flight controller and the Thrustmaster T16000M in my left hand for thruster control. The Gladiator performed fantastically in its main hand role. Its precision is brilliant, making both getting and keeping guns on target a breeze, the number of buttons making it easy to bind all of the controls to the stick, including weapons, targeting and navigation, leaving the second stick open for maneuvering and power management. So the Gladiator 2 performs extremely well in everything I tested, and I should say again that I did a lot of testing with this stick. I've had this stick for several weeks at this point before making this review. But there is one more thing to look at before I wrap this up. Cost. The VKB-Sim Gladiator 2 comes in for a surprisingly low $99 before postage on the official North American store, and you will need to keep postage in mind. It seems availability of this joystick and most VKB products is largely limited only to the online store fronts. This puts the Gladiator 2 at a slightly cheaper cost to a good quality low to medium range HOTAS system, while providing the feel, precision and most importantly quality of a stick at nearly twice its price. If you're a sim pilot looking for a quality stick but limited to a sub 100 budget, I thoroughly recommend you take a look at the Gladiator 2. For purchasing, VKB Sim has a store in Europe and North America online, dividing into two. I will put links to both of them in the video description down below. However, for those of you in the Australian or Southeast Asian region, there is no store in that region currently. Your best bet is to make your order out of the US storefront. Anyways, ladies and gents, I hope you enjoyed the video and thank you very much for watching. I hope you found it informative. Remember to click that like button and subscribe if you want to see more, and until next time, fly smart, fly safe, and I'll catch you in the skies.